Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we are going to address three topics. Now, you know Thomas, he'll be out in the weeds a bit, but we're going to try to stay now on three topics. These are events that have happened right now that the corporate propaganda media does not understand what is really going on, but we want you to know because we want you to feel confident that there are strategic moves that Trump is making to help clean the swamp. You just might not see it. The first one is about the visa overstays. The second one are the remittances that are going to Mexico from Mexican workers here in the United States. And the third is the overhaul of the Office of Personnel Management. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, I don't know. You want the interesting one, the big reveal, or do you want the more boring one?
I can't make that decision.
You can't? It's too big of a decision? Well, you came up with...
Because I know what people will do. If I say this, then they're going to do that. And so...
Okay, well, here's the deal.
They're all big.
Questions have arisen recently, and three of them are there. Another one on
I tell you what.
Qatar, another one on the visit to England. And so now at least it seems as if we're giving, commentary on the news instead of leading you in intelligence reports. But here, let's give some commentary on the news. The Office of Personnel Management. You hear that it's being overhauled. It's being overhauled. It's being chopped up into pieces. Why? The Office of Personnel Management is how the SES comes into our government, the senior executive service members. They do not even do clearance checks on many of these people who are then in charge of agencies that handle top secret material. Isn't that amazing? So what do? They just give them a waiver, and they make them SES, and they don't put them on the civil servant a GSA path. What they do is they pay them whatever they want to pay them, and then they give them bonuses at the end of the year through these weird awards. And so the Office of Personnel Management is going to be chopped up, and all security clearances are going to go through the Department of Defense. That's already started. Why?
And he said Department of Defense. For those of you that didn't hear that, this is important because prior to that, these security background checks were so bad they permitted people like Imran Awan to run the IT system at Congress.
He actually didn't even have a clearance, but because of letters written by Andre Carson, Gregory Meeks, Al Green, and other very, very corrupt Congress people, they got him the highest top secret security clearance for Imran Awan. But you see, the Office of Personnel Management is in such disarray that this type of hiring, that you have two systems. You have the civil service system that doesn't even have a merit system in it, and that's what Mick Mulvaney came in and immediately started to implement, is if you don't do your job, you may get fired. This is completely unheard of with federal agencies. You can't hardly fire a federal staff member, especially... And you can't fire a senior executive service member unless the higher ups of the senior executive service allows you to. So they are redoing the whole thing, and you can't get rid of an agency. So Trump can't, within this budgetary constrictions, get rid of an entire agency, but he can chop it into pieces. And we believe that when he gives out, first off, the fact that many of the SES members are totally corrupt. They can't get a security clearance. Are you kidding? These are the corruptocrats of the world. These are the globalists, and they are moved into these positions to make sure that nothing but the globalist agenda goes on.
Like, maybe people aren't aware that the following people I name are senior executive service. That would be Rod Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, Lisa Page, James Baker.
Any criminal that's been in the news is probably an SES member.
Yes.
99%
Robert
guaranteed.
Mueller.
And every member on his team was an SES member. Because that's a given, because he's a special counsel, and he had $100 million a year to spend. So when they say they spent $35 million, that's just for him and 4 other people. That's what they paid themselves, the people coming from WilmerHale. The rest of them were already government employees, so they didn't go on the bill. But anyway, this is what happens all the time, and it can happen because the Office of Personnel Management gets to do whatever it wants to do because it has thousands and thousands of appointees in a year. Presidential appointees. These are basically temporary staff that did not come up through the civil service. So they can't meet the standard requirements. So then they're given exceptional, extraordinary jobs under the conditions of the SES, which was separated off, I think, in 1979 as its own separate group and started off as the SIS, the Senior Intelligence Service, and then became the Senior Executive Service, and now every single federal agency is headed by an SES member. Doesn't matter who's appointed by the president.
Now, is it true that because this recent shutdown occurred and lasted so many days, that gave Trump the window to go in and to make these big overhauls?
That is correct. And that is the reason that the Democrats hated it so much that it went for so long. And they were going out of their minds, but they wouldn't bend one iota. They wouldn't give $1 to the wall. They called it immoral, blah, 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 blah. But in the end, there's all kinds of weird things going on right now. When Pelosi came in, the Democrats in the House, they changed many, many of the procedural rules. And those rules control everything. It controls what comes onto the floor and how it goes through and who has to do what to get it there and so on and so forth. They changed all those things so the impeachment calendar could be put in place. But at the same time, they did budgetary weirdnesses beyond your imagination. So Trump out-Trumped them by doing a 2-year budget and getting the National Defense Authorization Act for 2 years, which never happens. And he got his military budget, and out of that he's able to build the wall, but he's able to do all kinds of other things. So, changing, it will not die. The Office of Personnel Management, it won't die. It'll be truncated. It'll be pared. It'll be trimmed up, and it will be made more efficient. Because right now, what it is it's a way to sneak people in to the federal government. Remember, the federal government has 4.5 million people in it. Trump controls 4.5 million people. It's the largest institution in the world. And it is the most disorganized. And you can't get anything done because you have to go through so many different offices. Like the 17 intelligence communities. Why is there an Office of the Director of National Intelligence? Cut that out. There's already the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor. You don't need the corporate, private companies like Clapper and his whole gang of nonsense. And all those Lockheed Martin's L3 and all of them, all of the corporate intelligence agencies are corrupt as they can possibly be. Anything they get from us that's top secret, they sell. That's the reason Hillary was able to do what she did with absolute impunity. I'm just going to have all my top secret stuff go across my Google account and my Gmail account. Everybody has the password, and Tony Podesta's password is password. And yeah, that's right. That's the kind of idiocy that was going on. So the Office of Personnel Management is going to make people sign real security agreements, which it's treason to do what she did. So
and
that's
many
the big
people won't
adjustment.
get through it either.
They
Plus,
won't get
so
through it.
bottom line, what we're going to be watching is the destruction, it may be slow, of the Senior Executive Service. We've called them out, we've identified them, and now we're going to start attacking them, but in an administrative, legal way.
And we hope to put some of them in jail. And if A.G. Barr wants to be the greatest Attorney General of all times, please do your job. That's all you have to do. Just do your job, you'll be the greatest. Why? Too many criminals around. All you have to do is just pluck them and put them in jail, whatever jail you determine they need to go into. But as Betsy keeps saying, and I am slanting more to that direction, you may have to do this as one of the two types of civilian, basically military tribunals for treason that Brett Kavanaugh said were legal. There's 3 types of treason that can be prosecuted. One, militaristically, and that's the way I like to do it, and that's the way I always advocate for no corporate intelligence. Military intelligence, then you can actually prosecute these people for doing what is treason. You couldn't have done the conspiracy for treason and the coup d'etat that still is going on with Adam Schiff and Cummings and Nadler and the rest of the and Pelosi and the rest of the Democrat gang. They're still attempting what is an overthrow of a duly elected president, which they have done before in Ukraine twice before. They overthrew the person Paul Manafort was representing, Yanukovych, and now his enemy, Poroshenko, was just beat out of office by a comedian who was playing the president on TV in Ukraine, and he got 73% of the vote. Watch what's going to happen now. Oh my goodness. Victoria Nuland
yes.
invested $5 billion in having Ukraine be a nice oligarch playground for Americans like Joe Biden and John Kerry, who should go to jail for his work in Iran.
Weeds. We got to stick up to our subject. Okay. Do you want anything else about this in your executive service?
Well, that's the OPM, and we can see that it's dissolving. And it won't be able to dissolve, as we told you from the beginning, from day one, until Trump is in his second term, which we predicted he would be in. I'm pretty certain we may be the only people out there who, from day one, or before day one of President Trump being President Trump, predicted he'd have 2 terms, and that the second term would be easy for him to get, and that he would then really clean house at that point.
Okay. The second one, because I know which one you want to keep for last. The second one, let's talk about the visa overstays.
Visa overstays. They're now going into this, and this is going to be what Barr, who has said no more catch and release, William Barr, the Attorney General, he's also saying no more visa overstays. Visa overstays, 600,000 at least overstay every year in America. There's 1 million coming across the southern border. Now, you can parcel that out the way you want, and they're going to tell you that it's half and half, but it's not. And remember, the 1 million coming across the southern border? Those are the documented ones. What about the undocumented ones? What about the ones they don't catch? And the visa overstays, we at least know the name they gave us, those people, why they were here, whether they were students, whether they were coming for visitors, and that's really one of the worst ones. Anybody from anywhere that has a citizen here that is in their family, they can come for a visit and never go home.
Well, did you want to talk a little bit about Qatar in that, or is that?
Well, Qatar has, it's only got 313,000 people in it, but that are really Qataris, or Qatars, if you want to say one of the ways of saying it. It's Qatar. With an I in the end, so I say Qataris. So the Qataris, 313,000, that's all it is. It's a small town, basically, in America. And it's the richest country in the world. It has the richest oil reserves in the world, and most of its people don't even stay there. And they basically have slaves, 2.3 million slaves working for them, who they beat, and they have to live underneath Sharia law, so they can stone them to death if they say Muhammad wrong, or disparage Muhammad, or touch their wife with their left hand, or anything. Sharia law. Okay, so they share the north and south fields of the Persian Gulf for the liquid natural gas with Iran. And people are asking us, what's the deal with Qatar? Well, I don't know what the question is. Qatar is a long history I'd have to describe, but what was the first thing Trump did? He went to Saudi Arabia and cut Qatar off. Isn't that amazing? Because Qatar provides the oil for the United Arab Emirates, for a good part of Bahrain, for Russia now. In January, maybe this is what they mean. In January 2019, Qatar got out of OPEC. Well, the reason they got out of OPEC is because they're selling oil to Russia on a massive scale, which is really liquid natural gas specifically. And so there's some really weird things going on. In other words, Russia's trying to infiltrate Qatar. Well, we have one of our largest defense bases in the Middle East there. Also in Bahrain, right down the street, as well as in Saudi Arabia. So Russia's trying to get in there. But the biggest oil reserves in the world are right there between Iran and Qatar and Iran are friends. Though Qatar are Sunnis and Iran are Shiites, and Trump has sanctions on them, that is not stopping the Qataris, who are the richest people around.
The point being, they're very wealthy, and they have a lot of Qataris over here who have overstayed their visas.
Oh, yeah. Visitors' visas. And why? Because they don't have to live under Sharia law over here. So most of the rich people move out from there, come over here. But let's talk about remittance. Is that what we're talking about?
Did we talk about the visa overstays? Are we finished with that one?
Well, no, not completely. So when this happens, first off, we know the supposed names of these people, okay? We know supposedly where they went. Now, here's what's really, really weird, and you're not going to believe it. So if you're standing up at work, sit down, because what I'm about to tell you, you're going to say I'm lying, probably as you've thought I've lied many times before and found out that I was telling the absolute truth, and one of the few people telling you the truth. The conclave is saying yes, and they are included in it. Yes. So the point is true, that the conclave and Aim for Truth and the American intelligence media and
the
Betsy and the team,
at AFI.
the researchers at AFI, these people are smart. So they're going to tell you things that are going to shock you. So today, I'm studying with a group who had directed me into something they thought was very important, and one of them being Betsy. And this was, how is the Federal Reserve connected to remittance? Now, when you come into America from Mexico, as long as you can get a flight...
Wait a minute. So we've changed the subject. We moved to the third one?
No. As long as you can get into America on a visa
okay.
from anywhere, you don't have to go home. Not only that, but you can work. You just do what they tell you to do, which is steal a dead person's social security number and their name, their identity. It's as easy as pie. Whoever just died in the neighborhood, just go say, no, you're still alive, send a letter to the Social Security Administration, you're fine. And they will pay you taxes. I mean, they'll let you work. You can pay taxes. They'll send you tax returns. They will consider you to be a real person. This is what 800,000 DACA illegal aliens are doing at this very moment.
So this is the IRS that's allowing that to occur. So the IRS doesn't care who you are. They just want you to pay taxes.
And the Social Security Administration.
Okay.
And Immigration and Customs, and all of them.
So they're all in on it.
They're all in on it.
So that means that somewhere along the line, somebody's getting some payolas.
Oh my gosh. It's at the ballot box. Because as long as they do not follow the law, like Obama broke the law to allow DACA to stay. Obama invented catch and release. Obama invented putting children at the border, and as soon as they step across, and all their parents and their family can come with them. But for a minute, they're going to be called unaccompanied minors. But then we're going to find their parents in Mexico and literally bring them up here and move them to a place like the Somalis who have taken over, Minneapolis, and place them exactly where Obama wanted them. That's what he was doing. But Trump is criticized for just stopping them at the border and saying, hey, we have a border.
Thomas,
now,
what has this got to do with the payolas?
Okay. This is bigger than you can possibly imagine. At the electoral box, they're looking at 22 million known illegal aliens that the FBI has confirmed are numbers, which we actually believe it's a little more than that is confirmed. But then for those who are not confirmed, double it, 44 million. Any of them can vote, especially in California, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. That is the payola. That keeps who in place? The Democrats who have no program, who basically just keep gutting America for the globalists. Okay? So, remember, Mexico, Obrador's, the president of Mexico said, it is a Mexican right for Mexicans to illegally go across the southern border of America, work, and bring that money back to America. That's called remittance. But what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. But let's first work on remittance and visas. Anybody can get into this country. Anybody. They can either walk across an open border, or they can come across with on an airplane or on a boat, and then they may have a visa. But it doesn't matter. We don't enforce sending them back home. And we don't enforce sending back illegal aliens until a president really gets accused of it, and then they'll send back 1 million or 2. Okay? Well, we got 44 million, and that's just the ones I'm going to tell you about. Now, if that's what we know came across the border, how many visa overstays do we have? Okay, let's be conservative. 22 million illegal aliens came across the border that are in this country that the FBI knows of. They say that visa overstays are half of that, so that's 11 million. So let's count 33 million illegal aliens that they know of. They know their names. They even know where they are. They know where they live. They know their family, and nothing is being done. That is called an attack. That is called an invasion. That is called no borders. That's called George Soros is your president. And when Barack Obama was president, Barry Soetoro, that was George Soros. And when Hillary was going to be president, that was George Soros. Open borders.
That is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's the tip of the iceberg. What I'm about to tell you, as I say, don't get up yet because you're going to faint. Every year, $138 billion goes out of this country through remittance. And most of it doesn't go through wires. You want to know why? Because then they'd get caught. Because you or I can't wire money to ourselves or our family in a foreign country above $2,000 without reporting it to the IRS.
Isn't that true?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yes, but so how are all these Mexicans able to wire all this money back to Mexico?
I assumed...
Who's in on that?
Because I was so naive, and then I listened to you and your team and the conclave, and then I got woke. And this is shocking. And I don't even want to say it yet because I have to first paint the picture. Number one remittance going back to Mexico each year, $33 billion. $33 billion stolen from American non-taxpayers who did not pay taxes on it, who used the U.S. Federal Reserve and their automatic clearinghouse to send it back to Mexico in a special program created just a few years ago to make sure that the fleecing of America would go through the Federal Reserve and they would charge 0.67 cents on every single transaction so that they'd get their piece of the pie. But they were already getting that piece of the pie out of the $138 billion going through the U.S. Federal Reserve to foreign countries through remittance from people who may or may not, and probably likely 95% of them are not true taxpayers and are not paying taxes and are taking that money going to not even a bank that they have, because then we'd know who they were. Oh, no. The Federal Reserve has made it through the ACH, the automatic or automated clearinghouse, and then certified that through another group that they founded themselves, that this is perfectly okay. And since 1999, when we started it with Canada, like we always do, start it with the Brits and see how that works, and Canada ripped us off for 3 times that amount for the first years that it was going on. Isn't that amazing? So every single dual citizen in Canada was able to send their money back through the U.S. Federal Reserve to Canada or an offshore account without paying any taxes.
And keep in mind, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation.
Correct. And though they say they give back the money that they make, they are the ones who say how much they make, and we're not allowed to audit them, so how would we know? And then after they give us back that money, then they come back and demand that we pay them a big part of that money back. I don't know, hardly anyone understands the way the system works. Anyway, I'm so upset. I'm reeling back from the microphone.
But
I'm not
Trump
even started yet.
But Trump has done something about these remittances. What's been done?
Okay, here's the deal. With every single transaction, they get 67 cents as of 2015. I'm going to raise that to $1. Let's say they get $1 on every single transaction of $138 billion going back to Mexico, going out of this country every year. You think that's something? No. That same group clears everything imaginable. What used to obviously be the not sole domain, but at one point it practically was the sole domain of the U.S. Treasury, which is to clear credit cards and checks, has now gone over to the ACH, to the U.S. Federal Reserve. And they are a clearinghouse for $40 trillion a year.
And they get a cut of it, baby.
$40 trillion a year.
The world is ruled by different mobs, isn't it?
Yes, and we've shown how we have to audit the Fed. We have to seize our assets. First, we have to freeze their assets, audit them, seize our assets, and then declare bankruptcy in our payments to them. We don't need them. They have subsumed the U.S. Treasury until they have turned it into what they call, literally, get ready. I can't even believe this. You know what this system is called?
Go ahead. Lay it on me.
Fed Global.
Fed Global?
FED, capital GLOBAL, Fed Global. ACH is nothing but it's like the Depositors Clearinghouse for the stock exchange, for ICE, Intercontinental Exchange. The DTCC. So, these clearinghouses. There's also ICE is the clearinghouse for derivatives. So the clearinghouse for any currency exchanges, for remittances, goes through the Fed. And I was telling you the other day, we don't need the Fed. And with all this currency exchange, I'm sure that I literally said this the other day, that they're getting their little piece of the pie on every single exchange. Yes, they are. I didn't know it was this bad. $40 trillion on every single exchange, they get 0.67 cents. Now, mind you, this is the way that people send money. When you try to wire money out of this country, as I said a minute ago, and Betsy can tell you this, if you try to wire $5,000 somewhere, good luck. The feds will show up at your bank while you're there. You practically have to be arrested to send $10,000 as an American anywhere. Oh, no. Not if you use the U.S. Fed. If you walk in and say, in Spanish, literally, I've researched this all day, you don't have to speak English. You don't have to have a bank account here or in Mexico to walk in with cash and have it sent to your family. All you have to have is a password and an ID. This is the biggest offshore account ripoff in human history. $40 trillion possibly, for sure $138 billion a year. And most of those people are on visa overstays, visitor visas, student visas that stayed afterwards and got jobs.
Stolen Social Security numbers, IRS, Social Security Administration, all in on it, along with the feds.
DACA children,
Yep,
DACA's parents.
By the way, Kamala Harris still has not proved that she's a U.S. citizen. I'm telling you, she's an anchor baby.
And 1 million documented illegals coming across the southern border every year. And what did they do? As I said, Mexico, the president of Mexico ran upon the plank, number one plank. It is your right as a Mexican, I think he even used the word unalienable right, to go to America, work as an undocumented worker, and bring that money back to Mexico. I did not know that his central bank, the Central Bank of Mexico, has an agreement with our central banks, all of our central banks and our U.S. Federal Reserve, to have this exchange so easily done that it is just so common. That's why, guess where else we remit to? That's right, El Salvador. You want to guess the other two?
Any other nation.
Honduras.
Any nation that is really a puppet for the globalist and a staging ground for the invaders to come to America.
Number 2, remittance to China, our enemy.
Yeah.
Number 3, to India. You see, we are literally overtaken from the inside. We have rotted from the inside because of the system of the shadow government that was created to make sure that these globalists always advance, where we Americans are being ripped off left and right. We can't do any of the things that we allow illegal aliens to do. Illegal aliens have 100% medical coverage. No American does. They have whatever language they say they speak, then their child has to be taught in that language. As well as if they come to school looking as if they're homeless, they must be given a place to live, food, clothing, and everything else they need. This is just as an administrator of a school, superintendent of school. This, I can quote you the acts that are in relationship to this. The point is, an illegal alien seems to have more rights in America right now than we the people. And it's got to end. And we've said it from the beginning. One of the top 3 things the U.S. Federal Reserve must be frozen, audited, seized, and then turned out into the cold. Bankrupt. They have to go bankrupt. They're a private corporation. We don't need them. And now to find out $40 trillion and they're getting their piece of every single transaction is going on underneath our nose, and they stole this from the U.S. Treasury because they say that they're in charge of currency exchange. And not only that, they get you around all of the laws that are really there to stop offshore accounts sending stolen money. sending remittance that was never taxes was paid on. And by the way, I didn't tell you the good part. They charge 0.67% on every single transaction, but on every single currency exchange, they get the standard rate. So they have won the market. Nobody can get that because they're doing such huge volume. No one can give that amount in terms of moving this money around, as well as they've made it illegal to do so practically, except using Bitcoin and other unsure methodologies. So what have they done? They've cornered the market, but then they charge you the rate for currency exchange. And then the bank that they send it through, the central bank charges, and then the bank they send it through charges, and then the bank that it goes to in Mexico or wherever charges, and they may have surcharges on top of that. So what they're charging down at the bottom is really, the standard rates, which makes them the largest currency exchange group in human history. I can't calculate those numbers because you're talking about 8 to 10 to 12% for currency exchange. This is the biggest racket. I'm going to have to, I need conclave members to do the math for me to tell me just how big this is.
Well, they're encouraging the slavery of Mexican illegals, and then they're sucking off that labor through a pass-through charge. So it's just a form of human trafficking. And that is what we always have to think outside of the box here. Now, it's just not the organs and the children and the raping and the whatever. It's also about seizing the labor of a slave class.
Boy, you nailed that one, Betsy. And
Betsy nails one.
And you're the one who brought this to my attention. And when you said this, I said, well, I assume it's mostly in cash. Well, it is in cash, but it goes into all the banks. Every single bank in America will do this for you. And you don't have to speak English, and any illegal alien can remit money to their country. And guess how much is remitted to, say, El Salvador? Guess how much is remitted to
mention how far that currency would go in those poor countries.
In those three countries, you're talking 30 to 40 billion. That's what we know of. That's not the illegal stuff. So 30 to 40 billion that is admitted. Okay, so we give them 30 to 40 billion in U.S. aid. Now think of that. We are basically propping up these countries that are sending invaders against us, and they say on their television, all over the television in El Salvador, in Honduras, go to America, they got jobs waiting, they'll give you rides, they'll give you food, everything's beautiful, you can't go wrong. They'll take care of your children, take a child with you, because then they tell you how to plea for asylum. They tell you everything on the television stations in those three countries. Who's paying for those ads? That's what you should ask next. Those would be Venezuelans. By the way, we remit huge amounts, 23 billion, I think it is, to Venezuelans who are here. But they're leaving their country because of the terrible things going on because of socialism. So really, this is the most amazing form of ripoff that is institutionalized and is not legal. There's none of it that's legal, but there's no provisions to say, hey, you speaking in a language I can't understand, I can't take you have a password and a name, so I have to take your money whether I know who you are or not. They closed down Swiss numbered accounts. They closed down some offshore accounts, and now they've opened up this. So the U.S. Federal Reserve has become the number one offshore mover of $40 trillion a year. And as Betsy has pointed out, the racketeering with the automated clearinghouse being able to remit money to foreign countries that is basically stolen by illegal aliens in this country is completely done by the U.S. Federal Reserve. They should all go to jail. And because they're a corporation, by the way, no one can go to jail. And the human trafficking and people dying, no one can be prosecuted for that because they're a corporation. We got to end this corporation control of America, and we have to turn it back to Americans.